and managers, and welcome to this latest stream. While I click buttons and do stuff, hope you're all doing well today, or as well as can be. There is annoying interference coming through on my side. So before we do anything too exciting, after I do the clickety-clicks, we're going to be doing, finding where the interference is coming from. Boy, it's a fun game. One of my favorite, in fact. Okay, I think that's all the YouTube stuff done. Morning. Hope everyone's well. Good morning, Postmatic. Hope you're doing well, or as well as can be. Alright. Morning, Arop, and Lord Volpex. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so that's all the clickety-clacks I need to do. Now I need to hunt down some interference. So, if you'll excuse me. Alright. I think that's it. Is that it? Field repair. I think we'll do a field repair. This is becoming a bit of an annoying problem. Good morning, Dave. I have my pen holder / duct tape to do a field repair. Yep. Alright. Now we've got duct tape. Microphone's going quiet for a while. All right, I think I got that sorted. Good morning, Shadow Aura. Hope you're doing well. Ooh, Switch 2, nice. Say that, but I haven't actually used a Switch or a console in years. Okay. I think I'm coming through decently. There's a lot less interference on my end. Yep. What I am going to do is fix my pen holder, because now this pen's all over my desk. But feel free to speak amongst yourselves, talk to me, ask questions, all that good stuff. Fair enough. What's the old phrase? If it moves and it shouldn't, use duct tape, and if it doesn't move and it should, use a WD-40 every time. Okay. I could probably, if I was so inclined as to a lot of the what is it? Just a 2-minute craft channels. This would be an entire video by itself, making a pen holder out of duct tape and the inner roll of kitchen towels. Good morning, Vaka. I hope you're doing well. And ex-dadster, I hope you're doing well as well. Alrighty. Here we go. There's my janky pen holder. Now I can pick up all the pens across my table and put it in my janky pen holder. And then for months I had an anti-spill mechanism on my coffee cup, and my wife thought I was insane, but it works. So there you go. There's my anti-spill mechanism. My coffee cup fits nicely into there and makes it very difficult to knock over. Makes a bit of a bitch to carry, but yeah. Such is life. All right, got many, many much peoples. Many, many much peoples. Well, as long as the day is going, then that's a good thing, I think. I do have a slight problem. I've just run out of coffee, but I do have a monster. And I do have really weird colored water. So in South Africa, you can't really get gamer subs. So one of the things I tried when I got here was gamer subs, which is what this is. Color aside, flavor aside, it's caffeine water, which is like the perfect water. What more could you want? Well, I get supplemental minions, but definitely not while I'm streaming. Okay, I'm coming through. Radiation water. Oh, yes. Not only does it give you a kick in the pants, it keeps giving you a kick in the pants for the rest of your life. You can generate your own power source. Okay, so we're all good? We're all good? We're not falling off, are we? We haven't bumped anything? Testing, testing. Nope, that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay. I'll give them plenty of pay. Yeah, yeah. Although it does make finding your keys in the dark a lot easier. I think everything is slightly radioactive. In fact, there's like a level of background radiation all across Earth, and if you step off Earth, it goes up significantly. Because science, apparently. Wasn't really paying that much attention during science class. But yes. I think Gamer Subs works out cheaper than Monster, but it's nowhere near as good as Monster. But it's still caffeine water, which is good. I have spoken at length at my distaste for normal water, and this is the way to get around it. Well, if it takes 1,000 years, I think I've got some bigger problems in my near future than that. Cheers, Dave. Hope you have a good walk. Hope the dog doesn't drag you too far. Yes, yes. That was actually my thought earlier today. It looks like sunlight liquid. Although, have you ever looked at the color of Monster or Red Bull? Not the best color either. Tastes a bit like soap as well. Clean myself from the inside. Fair enough, Dave, fair enough. Oh, that's the other thing. Posting the link. Alright. That link. Oops. To this chat. Link. Okay. Right. Right. There is the Twitch channel for those that are interested. But fear not, I will still be dual streaming for as long as probably forever. I don't think so, Shadow. I don't think so. If the spoon stands up, I'm generally good. I can consume it before it hardens. Alright, we've got a busy day today. Pulled out the spreadsheet of doom. Testing. Spreadsheet of doom. Okay. I think that's better. And that's even better, I think. I just couldn't hear myself speak. So we're doing those plus these. which should get us a nice hefty 15,000 words. And put us exactly a week ahead. Which means tomorrow. Tomorrow is exciting. Tomorrow. Because we've got some extra time. We'll be doing Billy Bob. Space Tracker. Yes. Going back to our roots. Probably Lord Volpex. For those new to the stream, I am cursed. Whenever I get more than a week ahead, I always get sick, without fail. Or go into surgery, or have emergency surgery, or move, or something. Whenever I get a week ahead, there is always something that just eats through that week. So that I'm on the back foot again, trying to catch up again. What's kitty? Sorry, we have a kitty cat. It is staring at me. Hold on. You want to go sleep behind the computer? There's my exercise for the day. I picked up the cat. Good morning, Phoenix. Hope you're doing well. Anzac Day. There was a big story related to Anzac. No, it doesn't dance to the dance. My wife loved that video. This cat doesn't do that. It's just staring at me like I just insulted its ancestors, which I did. Let's be honest. Its ancestors hunted caribou across the plains of the Serengeti, and this one needed a hands up to get on top of a table. I mean, it's the same strife to them. But now my monitor is purring at me, so I suppose there are some wins. Could be the radiation, could be Murphy, could be a lot of things. Maybe Murphy is radiation. Who knows? What do you think about the stories? Really? Really? You liked it? Huh, that's interesting. What do you think about the next story? He likes it too. It's a whole series now, Vaka. I haven't haven't narrated it because it's a series, so it goes on the series channel. But there's a whole bunch. He released a new one yesterday, I think. No, today, in fact. Which was, give me a sec. An alien unboxes some fan mail. So that was released an hour ago. Author's struggling a bit, unfortunately, with some health problems. So, he does have a link if you are interested in helping. If you head to his stories, there are links there to help him out. No, I don't think I've ever drunk chocolate milk out of a wine glass, but I don't really drink chocolate milk. They are funny. I remember seeing something about that, Phoenix. No matter the size of the cat, it's still a cat. A cat. A cat. Alrighty, lots of work to do today, so I think we'll move on to the first story. I don't know why I laugh like that. What am I doing? Oh, working. That's what I'm doing. All right, so the process is going to be, I'm going to talk to my computer for a bit. You guys can watch me talk to my computer. It's going to be awesome. If you have any questions, just pop them down. I'll answer them if possible. Chat amongst yourselves. But more importantly, I hope you enjoy the story. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition. There we go. Better. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of ReTVOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called So Our Children, written by Mac Dye. Thank you for the gifted membership, fucker. It is very much appreciated. Cape Canaveral, Florida, Earth, 2272. This is the President speaking. This broadcast is being sent to every colony, every station, every mining camp, and every ship in the Republic. Today we received word that the last Calfrons. Today we've received word that the last Calfrons world has fallen. Confirmation that last of the Calfrons fleet was sunk, with no survivors. That their government in exile is en route with the last of their people to the colony station of Bernard Star. President Serena. No, all good. I don't mind being interrupted. Especially if you're going to give me money to interrupt me. You could interrupt me as much as you want. President Serena Mishra stood at a podium 2 kilometers away from Cape Canaveral Space Dock. Behind her, dominating the horizon, sat the pride of the Republic fleet, the newly commissioned Dreadnought-class warship, the Phoenix. In 2 years, Bernard Star will be complete. To the workers. In 2 years, Barnard Station will be complete. To the workers even now striving to see the great project finished, I ask that you work quickly. Excuse me. That soap water is fighting back. Thankfully, I'm not burping bubbles. What was to be the greatest testament to human engineering, to be the first non-planetary space station, home from our future generations, will now be the last hope of the Calfron civilization and all the life on their birth world. The first Ark ship, carrying the biodiversity of their birth world, will arrive in 15 standard months. I ask that you be ready for them. Behind the President, all along the distant warship's hulls, warning lights began to flash. Great waves of heat rose from its flanks as the modular atmospheric lifts began to spin to life, preparing to lift the massive warship from the surface of Earth and cast it into the orbit. On this day, in agreement of the Senate, the First Fleet has been organized and shall be deployed to join the Arcarian Empire's picket fleets, in preparation for our arrival of the Hive. In preparation for the arrival of the hive, there has been much debate in regards to the people of Earth involving themselves in this war. At our best estimates, the hive is 200 years from reaching our space at the current rate of advance. The phoenix began to rise from its moorings, rising slowly into the sky. A distant roar could be heard over the transmission, and President Mishra and President Mishra's hair blew in a steadily rising wind. There was no meaningless green screen used to superimpose the president so near to the rising warship. She was broadcasting on location. 17,000 of our finest, 17,000 sons and daughters of Earth and her colonies, our children, spouses, parents. The First Fleet is armed with our best scientists can devise, armored with the best our engineers can produce. They will reach the Arcarian Empire's fleet in 5 years at best speed. The massive ship rose into the sky before its own engines began to spin up, pushing it forward even as the modular lifts pushed it higher, where it would join the Liberian. Oh. Thank you very much for the 10 New Zealand dollar reduce, Tomo K77. Hey, like I said, if you're going to give me money to interrupt me, I'm strangely okay with that. But thank you very much. It is very much appreciated. Oh, I itch. The massive ship rose. The massive ship rose into the sky before its own engines began to spin up, pushing it forward even as the modular lifts pushed it higher, where it would join and lead a fleet of dozens of humanity's finest ships. They will not be enough. Lunar Shipyards, 2327. This is the President speaking. President John. This is the President speaking. President Alex Johnson smiled with a strange mixture of pride and sorrow as he delivered the opening lines in an historic speech. This broadcast is being sent to every colony, every station, every mining camp and ship of the Republic. Today we've received word that the Acheron Empire has fallen. Confirmation that the last of the Acheron fleet has withdrawn, but the selfless actions of the First Fleet, that their government in exile is en route with the last of their people to Barnard's Star. In the background, seen through an expansive window, the newly commissioned Dreadnought-class warship, the Phoenix, could be seen. Cables burst free of its hull, drifting away before retracting into the shipyard's construction struts. Expansion of Bernard Station is due to be complete in 1 year. This project, co-funded by your taxes and the Calfron people, co-built by human and Calfron's technicians and engineers, co-designed by our... Co-designed by ours and their scientists, will house the Acheron Empire's government in exile and the last of their people. In 11 standard months' time, the first arc ships of the Acheron home. In 11 months' time, the first arc ships from the Acheron home world will arrive. I ask of you working there to be ready for them. The massive warship, twice the size of its predecessor, began to activate her running lights, began to shake off the last of the retaining clamps that held her in her moorings of the lunar shipyards. If those are the dongs you're sending me, again, I am happy to accept those kinds of dongs. Or wangs. I think there is a currency that has a wang. The lunar shipyard. The only problem is if you're sending in multiple currencies, the banks chew up most of that money. On this day, in full agreement of the Senate and the Calfron's people, The second founding of the First Fleet will be deployed to join the Izzy and Ma'id fleets in preparation for the arrival of the Hive. Just as when President Mishra first deployed 17,000 of our bravest sailors on a hopeless mission, there has been much debate on why we continue to fight a foe so far from our shores. In an unscripted display, the Phoenix's gun ports opened, unveiling the next generation of weapons devised from the combined sciences and experiences of the human and the Calfrance people. President Johnston's smile grew more confident, if only for a moment. Today, we send 37,000 of our finest sailors, we and the Calfrance brethren can field. They will reach Izzy space in 3 years at best speed. We've long debated why we should send them, why we should engage in a war so far from home, one that may never come here. They may never come here. The Phoenix began to push forward out of the lunar shipyard superstructure, moving forward to join a fleet of 100 other warships. We fight now so our children may learn from our lessons, that they be better armed when this duty falls to them. Mars, Naval Shipyard 2361. Ooh, another super chat. Thank you very much, Vaka. It is very much appreciated. Yes, the interruption is taken as an apology. It's fine. It's great. I don't mind. It's all good. Good morning, Lazy Comet. Hope you're doing well. 61. This is the President speaking. President Hideki Kimishutu. Hideki. President Hideki Kishimoto. President Hideki Kishimoto stood on the observation deck of the central hub of the sprawling Martian shipyard. The structures fully encompassed Mars, moons, and Phobos. Awesome. Pseudo Friday is just as good as Friday. Sprawling Martian ship. Just with tentacles. Sprawling Martian shipyard. This is the President speaking. President Hideki Kishimoto stood on the observation deck of the central hub of the sprawling Martian shipyard. The structure fully encompassed Mars, moons of Phobos. This broadcast is being sent to every colony, every station, every mining camp and ship of the Republic. Today, we have received confirmation that the final evacuation efforts of the Izzy homeworld is complete. The lightning strike of the Hive Fleet, which threatened to see of the Hive excuse me. The lightning strike of the Hive Fleet, which threatened the lightning strike of the Hive ship, which threatened to see the Izzy Mahidi fleet sunk, was successful, if temporarily repelled. The First Fleet was lost with all hands, and a rearguard action which allowed the Hive. Micro, why don't you read stories perfectly? Because there's spelling mistakes. The First Fleet, and some sentences don't flow. They flow on a page, but they don't flow when you talk. But anyway, that's just me mumbling to myself. Was successful. Was successful. Was successfully, if temporarily, repelled. The First Fleet was lost with all hands in a rearguard action, which allowed the Izzy and the Mahid fleets to break contact and reorganize an effective resistance to the Hive's assault. At the back of the newly commissioned... At his back, the newly recommissioned Dreadnought-class warship, the Phoenix, powered its engines for the first time, breathing life into a proud warship third in January. breathing life into the proud warship's third incarnation, forged of the combined sciences of three races, all experienced with fighting and losing to the hive. The Phoenix would have been strangely alien to the President Mishra's eyes. The first arc ships departed from the Izzy homeworld 2 years ago have already arrived at Bernard's Star. The survivors of the Izzy fleet make full speed to the Mahid stellar line. From these prepared defenses, the Izzy fleet will join with the Mahid, Yastai, Bolnoyan, and the Kenqua fleets. As had happened some 30 years prior, the captain of the Phoenix went off the script and opened her gun ports. Dense arrays of powerful weapon systems came online, bristling all along the heavily armored hull. On this day, in full agreement of the Senate, the Galfrons and the Arcarian people had both fully unified. The Galfrons and the Acheron people had both fully unified and were represented within the Republic's government and Senate, no longer standing as separate governments in exile. The third founding of the First Fleet has been commissioned. The fleet, led by the Phoenix, will make haste to the stellar line, and will arrive in 1 year at best speed. The Phoenix pulled out on the sprawling moon-turned shipyard's moorings. 3 huge turrets traversed with a speed belaying their size. 3 turrets, each mounting a massive main guns, flashed red with heat as the weapons fired. Seconds later, the surface of Deimos, already cratered from the centuries of weapons tests, flashed, and the tiny moon vanished in a slowly expanding cloud of debris. Today, we sent 270,000 of our finest. The First Fleet, 207 of our finest warship. The First Fleet, 207 of our finest warships. We send them now to fight a war 100 years from reaching our borders, in the hope that our children will have the time and allies needed to prepare to take up the torch. Bernard Sphere. Good morning, IHMC. Hope you're doing well. Take up the torch. Bernard Sphere Shipyard, 2580. This is the President speaking. Kommel was the first half-human, half-Galfron's president, and she stood proudly in front of a massive window in the expansive superstructure of Bernard Sphere's shipyards. This broadcast is being sent to every colony, every station, every mining camp and ship of the Republic. Seen through that window was the newly commissioned dreadnought, the Phoenix, as well as her 3 sister ships, all bearing names of similar connotations. The 4 huge ships were the result of the combined sciences of a dozen species, most of whom called the Bernard Sphere home, refugees of dozens of fallen civilizations, all victims of the hive's advance. Today I announce the completion of the Dyson Sphere at Bernard Star, and the first founding of the Second Fleet. On this day, in full agreement of the Senate and the Second Fleet. On this day, in full agreement of the Senate, the Second Fleet will set course for the Sol system. There it shall join the 11th founding of the First Fleet, and the fleets of 7 alliance species. Huge blast doors opened to reveal the black of space beyond, and the 4 huge warships began advancing under their maneuvering thrusters, taking their first steps into the void. We've launched no arc ships from Earth. There will be no evacuation, for there will be no need. In that blackness of space, what might first have been seen as stars began to coalesce into patterns. Not the light of distant suns, but the engines of hundreds, thousands of warships moving in formation. Formations that would be led by the 4 largest warships to ever be built. Long has there been debate over President Mishra's decision to launch an ill-prepared fleet on a hopeless mission. Every soul of the First Fleet knew they would never set foot on Earth again. Never see parents and loved ones. The same held true for the second founding, the third, the 10th. The phoenix has risen again and again, only to be slain on the talons of the hive. Millions of Republic lives have been lost in a war that, for more than 300 years, could not be won. The dreadnoughts pulled free of the massive docks and made haste towards their waiting formations. Today, I proudly send 7 million of the Republic's finest sailors, strongest ships, our bravest and brightest, to join their parents, their aunts and uncles, still serving in the First Fleet. For the first time in this war, 2 generations will fight side by side. For the first time, the Hive will know defeat. For the first time, we will give them no ground. And when the Hive is rebuked at the Sol system, we will push them back step by step, system by system, until they are spent. Distantly seen, those thousands of lights flashed and vanished into FTL, racing towards the Sol system. In 5 days, the Second Fleet will reach Earth. We will fight now, so our children... We fight now, so our children never need to take up the torch. End of story. Ooh, a bunch of people came in. Hello, hello, welcome, welcome. I shall greet you all individually as soon as I can see who joined. Zyborn, well done. Oh, sorry, that's an Aussie. Good day, mate. How's it going? 100? That's Afrikaans, not really on Australian. Restream, good day, hello, welcome, give me money. No, sorry. That's a bot. Give me money, bot. It's a bot that we trust. But while we wait for this to process, I do have... Oh, yes. Booba juice. Oh. Had to trim my beard yesterday. So for some reason, when your beard gets a bit long, it sits in the corner of your mouth, so if you chew and stuff, it gets a bit annoying. Normally it happens when I forget to trim my beard, so we had that. It is 10 a.m. for me. Lazy. What's the phrase? I don't go to war to protect my country. I go to war to protect my family. That's a phrase, that's a quote that's always stuck with me. And yes, I heavily respect all of those people. I mean, it's easy to forget, but there are people in my lifetime that I know, my dad, my grandfathers, both of them. And my grandmothers, they lived through the war. And yeah, not great stuff. Oh yeah, no, there's lots of vets and blue-collar workers. Well, that seems to be my audience. I'm not complaining in any way. I come from a blue-collar family, so. Oh, that's true. It is this virus. I mean, my grandfather was refused into the army because he had a job that couldn't be replaced. So they said, no, you have to keep doing your job to support the war. We refuse to let you join the army. Well, whatever you wanted to join. I think it was the army. Okay, so we got Storytellers today. And what are we on? 221. 3221. Guardian. Oh, that also works, Cyborn. That also works. That's funny, I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. You need to join the military. Huh? But yes. Bureaucracy and red tape. It is an invention that has been created a long time ago, and as some governments have worked very hard to perfect it. So, talking about Churchill, I remember watching this YouTube video. I don't know what they do. I think they do it. It's like a whiskey channel or something. They're like, look, you know, Churchill was famous for drinking tons and smoking tons. So we, as professional drinkers and makers of alcohol, we're going to try go 1 for 1 with an average day of Churchill. So whatever he said he had for breakfast, we'll have that for breakfast, whatever, you know, through that. Halfway through the day, these guys were so fucking sloshed that they could barely stand. And they still had like 4 more meals to go. I really don't know. Anyone, what was it? There was one of the satellites pointing, doing, what do they call it? Where they scan the colors for, color spectrum for planets. They think they've discovered a planet which may have life on it. Yeah, he was a huge guy. Anyways, on to the next story. Feel free to interrupt. Again, ask story questions or anything like that. Ooh, yawn. Greetings, ladies and melogents, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. These particular stories... Good morning, Alex. I hope that you are doing well. This particular story is called Guardian, written by Keevil KRS. Keeve. Written by Keeve KRS. Yeah, I mean, I for the most part do not read the news, and my life is the better for it. Rocky dust clung to Kenneth's footpads as he ascended the mountain, just as his fathers had done in seasons past, and his father before that, generations down into half-forgotten folklore. The sage had not spoken to any of them in so long. Kenneth's people thought that it was a myth, but ill omens and superstition were still a powerful force, and they did not wish to offend fate. So Kenneth trod the well-worn path up the mountain to his peak where the sage once lived. As Kenneth rounded a bend, he was granted a magnificent view of the plains below. Red grasses rolled endlessly into the horizon, broken only by the serpent-like twisting of the river. His gaze drifted downwards to the village nestled at the mountain's base. Though small, it had grown substantially in recent seasons as traders from upriver became frequent visitors on their way to the large port at the river's end, where it met the ocean. Some had even started bringing wares of polished copper and bronze. Kenneth wondered what the sage might have said about that. The secrets to working metal no longer a secret. Interesting times lay ahead. By midday, Kenneth had managed to climb more than 2/3 of the way. Long of body and neck, with deep chest cavities and strong lungs, his people had begun as simple scavengers, omnivores who could travel a full day or more without rest, in search of their next meal. As the seasons turned and ages progressed, they grew more clever, learning to fashion crude bone tools from their carrion, protective wraps from hide of their footpads, protective wraps of hide for their footpads, clothing of woven grasses to better conceal their presence. They learned how to hunt, how to farm, how to read the passing of seasons and prepare for the future, and thousands of other things that continually edged them closer to civilization. At some point in the distant past, his ancestors had discovered the mountain and the river. And his ancestors had discovered the mountain and the river that would pass it, shelter from the harsh storms and the dark season. At some point in the distant past, his ancestors had discovered the mountain and the river that wound past it, shelter from the harsh storms of the dark season, irrigation and fishing during the long light, a choice location to call their home. Then, in a moment of curiosity, one had chosen to climb the mountain. When he returned, he spoke of a sage who lived at its peak, a being of glowing light and endless wisdom. Thereafter, every generation made seasonal pilgrimages to the mountain peak to seek the sage's advice and knowledge. It became a tradition, one that endured long after the sage had ceased to appear. Kenneth expected no difference this time. He climbed to appease the village elders and to enjoy the crisp, cool air the mountain's height afforded him. An ominous dark smear on the horizon suggested he wouldn't have long to enjoy it, however. Storms were known to roll over the plains with frightening speed and fury. On the plains, during rain, the driving rain and wind would soak his clothes and lash his fur. On the mountain, it might well lift a fragile body and hurl him from the trail to his death. Perhaps tonight I'll find where the sage is sheltered and share its abode, Kenneth thought, quickening his pace. There had to have been somewhere safe to reside. When at last Kenneth reached the mountain summit, the day's light had faded behind thick grey-green clouds, and the sky was a disconcerting shade of purple. He could see a hazy line of darkness on the plains below. From his vantage point, the wall of torrential rain appeared to be moving slowly towards him, but Kenneth knew that where he were he down on the plains, he could not outpace it at a dead sprint. Sorry, just catching up with chat. At a dead sprint. "A storm will be here soon," a voice behind him intoned. Whirling, Kenneth laid eyes on something his forefathers had not seen in generations. On a wide flat stone, there stood a figure formed of light, white yet somehow not blindingly so. Its outline a pale yellow hue. Taller than himself, it stood on two thick legs, its torso squat by comparison, but sturdy. At its top were two more limbs, smaller than the legs, but just as muscular, and a bulbous round head that swiveled to face him. Though it lacked any distinct face, shocked, Kenneth dropped to his knees and prostrated himself before the figure. My people, forgive me, Sager. We thought that you but a myth." The figure gave a deep laugh, resonant and warm, the sound echoing around the rocks. "Sage is gone. I am Guardian." "Guardian?" Kenneth rolled, the unfamiliar word on his tongue. "Where is the sage gone? I do not understand." "I will answer when I can, but please, shelter. A storm approaches, and I must keep you safe." Guardian gestured to the rock face, where there was a cleft in the stone, just wide enough for Kenneth to slip through. Odd. I do not remember a crack there before. Hesitantly, Kenneth obeyed, squeezing through the narrow passages into a small cave, its floor sandy and warm to his footpads. Somehow, Guardian was waiting for him on the other side. Startled, Kenneth turned to look behind him, but there was no other entrance. Indeed, the crack he'd just come through was also gone. The room was sealed, as if sensing his mourning. The crack he'd just come through was also gone. The room was sealed, as if sensing his mounting effusion. Guardian spoke again. "Do not fear, young one. I protect those who shelter in my shadow. You and your people fear nothing. You and your people need fear nothing but yourselves." As it talked, Kenneth felt an odd disorientation, as if the cave was somehow moving. "A storm approaches, and I must keep you and your people safe. You must tell them to seek refuge." "I saw the storm from the mountain's peak," Kenneth answered, puzzled. "Our homes have weathered many such storms. Why is this one different?" "That is just weather," Guardian said, "and is of no consequence. The storm I speak of gathers far above the clouds, and will rain burning light and death upon your people." The frankness in the voice sent chills through Kenneth. "Who are you to threaten us? What happened to the sage? Who gave my village hope and wisdom?" Kenneth felt fear turn to anger, venting it on the strange apparition. "Storms that rain burning light and bring death. What sort of nonsense is that?" "Enough!" Guardian's outline blazed an angry red, silencing the frightened youth. "The threat is not of my doing. I am guardian, and I will protect you. That is my duty. Sage has done his, and is no longer needed. and is needed no longer. Miraculously, a second figure, smaller than Guardian, burned to life right before Kellett's stunned eyes. This one's height matched his own, though its limbs were still brutish and thick, and it waved a hand at Guardian as if to calm the larger one down. It would seem that this one does need me, the figure declared, a hint of amusement in its ethereal voice. It turned its featureless gaze to Kellett. Forgive Guardian, this is the first time he has had to interact with your people in millennia. Two? There are two of you? Kellett slumped back against the stones, stunned. He was trapped in a small stone chamber, with not one, but two figures from myth itself. And the stones behind him were rumbling, faintly. He could feel the vibrations, something with the mountain. He could feel their vibrations. Something within the mountain was moving. Yes, young one, there are as many of us as there are stars in the night sky. If your people are clever enough, bold enough, and strong enough, you may one day meet the rest of us. But first, you must weather the storm, and for that you will need Guardian's help. The sage's tone was smoothing, but still firm, as he continued. Go to your people. Tell them to seek shelter within the mountain. We will protect all we can. Kellett opened his mouth to speak, but both figures vanished before he could get a word out. Behind him, a gust of cold air washed over his fur, damp with rain. The gap in the stone had returned, yet as he slipped through the cleft, he found himself waist-deep in red grass at the mountain's base. Heavy rains battered him, nearly obscuring the dim glow of nearly obscuring the dim glow of reed lights from his village, now only a stone's throw away. The last denizens away. The last denizens entered the sanctuary, and Guardian closed the doors with a satisfied rumble. 100% secure and safe deep below the ground. Only empty buildings remained, and those were as nothing where collateral damage was concerned. None too soon, either. Heat signatures were already being detected burning through the thick atmosphere. It was time. Rock crumpled, shattered, roaring and grinding as it tumbled from the mountain that was not a mountain, eons of geology sliding away to reveal the monster that slumbered underneath. An armored titan rising up on 6 gigantic legs, a walking fortress bristling with weaponry. All across the planet, its brothers and its brothers awoke from their deathless sleep, rising from the seas and plains, glaciers and volcanoes, lifting their guns to the sky, ready to serve their puppets at last. Ready to serve their purpose at last. The heat signatures slowed, the intruders in the sky above pausing in concentration and uncertainty as the Terran planetary defense system came to life below them. As one, the city-sized hexapods trained their weapons towards the craft, 24 in all, each one warning of 24 in all, each one warning of more than 100 different weapons locked on. A transmission roared out, shaking the communication arrays with its power. This world is under the protection of terror, it bellowed. Live in peace. Believe in peace or die in pieces. End of story. Welcome to all the new people. Feel free to chat, ask questions, do all that fun stuff. While I work, I will answer as much as I can. And chat as much as I can. Oh, no, that's not what I want. All and then plan. But first, some boomer juice. Interesting, interesting. Look, I know none of the science stuff, so I can't say whether it's real or not. But it's still interesting. Hey, Bluey. Story number next, done. I have no idea. Wait, look it up. It's not something that I invented. I heard it somewhere, thought it was funny, and it's kind of stuck. Urban Dictionary. Boomer juice. Ah, low carb, no sugar. The white one, specifically. It's because it's no sugar. And all boomers have diabetes, I think. Something along those lines. Good morning, Mark Smith. Hope you're doing well. We're doing some re-TFOS and TFOS. And then we'll be a week ahead and I can get sick. It is pop culture, I suppose, but it's from a meme. But I think most people just call it boomer juice now. Oh. Right in the glasses. Yeah. 6 days ahead, no sickness. Yes, I don't think Murphy works that way. Because it's Murphy that keeps making me sick or injured or any of that stuff. Not really. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, I remember nursery school. Not nursing school. Completely different things. Nursery school. They used to give us very strong rooibos tea to drink. So the addiction to caffeine for me has been pretty much my entire life. Yeah. That doesn't sound good, Mark. Doesn't sound good at all. Fight back those allergens. Fight it. Get it. I know it's not that easy. Ooh. Billy Bob is on the list. You mean this Billy Bob? Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow we're starting with the re-TFOS of Billy Bob. The most classic and most HFY series in existence. There can be no other. Yes, we're going to do Billy Bob tomorrow. Isaac Arthur is pretty good at his explanations. All right. Now that I've got monster up my nose and on my glasses, doesn't work that well. Oh, stings a bit. All right. Next story. Chad is hopping tonight, yes, Mark Smith. I'm glad. The more Chad chats, the more the buttons are clicked and all of that stuff. The more the stream is promoted, as far as I understand. But it also means everybody's having a good conversation. Yep. Just checking everything. Making sure. So the chat rate is 6 chats per minute. 2 chats per minute. 2 chats per second. I have no. Chat rate has never been more than 1, so don't know how to read that stat. Fair enough, Lazy. Fair enough. Look, the 80s were a very different time. Sugar was a food group all by itself, which makes the boomer juice that much more funny. All right, on to the next story. Well, let's first save this story. Three. 222 dash. All right. For new people, again, feel free to chat. I'm gonna start narrating and all that stuff. Yeah, don't forget to save. Yes. Greetings, ladies and middlegents, and welcome to this latest narration. Greetings, ladies and middlegents, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFAS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Storytellers, written by PD46. Oh, the boomer juice is fighting back. Written by PD46 Lily. Humans are a curious race. They are a study in dichotomy of the greatest extremes. When they first came to the Greater Commons' attention, we didn't think much of them other than that they were a small, insignificant blip in the cosmos. Frankly, we thought they would become extinct shortly after discovery. They had only colonized. They had only just colonized an insignificantly small portion of their arm of the galaxy. We thought that one of the older members would wipe them out shortly, but that never happened. Not only were they not purged from the universe, they thrived and became one of the most respected members of the Greater Commons, and they did it without ever firing a single shot, harming a single sentient, or signing a single treaty when they first came before the Greater Commons. They did it through their elders, and the ones that remembered, the ones that most races dismiss as a burden, if they were even allowed to exist. They were the storytellers, the ones that remembered and told everything. They were the ones that the Greater Commons didn't know how to handle. At first, the aggressive races wanted to wipe out this new species on the galactic game board. Their technology was fairly on par with ours, but the Greater Common species had the significantly larger numbers. The humans were the opportunity to ask for protection. The humans were given the opportunity to ask for protection. Instead, they sent us recorded remembrances from their elders through several decades. Esther, age 87, survivor, Bergen-Belsen. I was 9 when they came for us. I spent 4 years in the camps. I watched my mother, my sisters, and my aunt slowly die of starvation and disease. Redacted. Maiko, age 83, survivor, Japanese internment. I was an American citizen, so were my parents. They took my So were my parents. They took my family's house, my father's business, and told us that we had to go, to move across the country, that we were traitors because of the way we looked. Redacted. Walter, age 79, survivor, Tuskegee experiment. My father was one of the people they studied for this atrocity. We trusted the doctors because they said that they were helping us. I have never had children because I can't. I watched my old man get sicker and sicker, and my sister died because we trusted the doctors. Redacted. Judith, age 91, survivor Rwandan genocide. Finally, an actual weird human name that I can pronounce. They came down the streets and broke into homes with machete. I actually remember this. Sucks balls. Judith. They came down the streets and broke into the homes with madness. There. They came down the streets and broke into the homes with machetes. They hacked people to pieces in front of their families and friends. Dozens of people, hundreds of people dead in the streets and in their homes. Mothers, fathers, babies. It didn't matter who they were or how old. All that mattered was that they were Tutsi. The thing is, the Hutu and the Tutsi, it didn't matter. The thing is, Hutu or Tutsi, it didn't matter. The only reason they were Hutu and Tutsi is because some other people said so. Redacted. Duaga, age 68, survivor, Sarajevo, age 68, survivor, Sierra Leone Civil War. I was 11. Soldiers came into my village and rounded up all the boys. They told us that we had to fight for the army. If we didn't, they said that they would kill us. I told them, no, I don't want to fight. They made my mother kneel in front of me and put a gun in my hand. They told me, shoot your mother, or we'll shoot your brothers and sisters. Then we'll shoot your mother and you. My mother told me to shoot her, so my brothers and sisters wouldn't die. I shot my mother, so my siblings wouldn't die, and went to be a soldier. Redacted. Rebecca, age 98, survivor, World War III. They cut our food rations to almost nothing. We had already been living underground for 5 years, and the food shortages were getting critical. Almost 2/3 of the food-producing areas were razed to the ground, all because of some idiot in charge decided that he was butthurt and started a war with someone just as much as an arsehole as him. I watched families with small children and no food suddenly have fewer children and more meat. It got so bad that the children were openly being sold for slaughter for a few bags of rice or beans. Redacted. The Greater Commons was shocked and terrified by the stories sent to us by these humans. Hundreds of them. Hundreds. Thousands of them. At first we thought that they were exaggerations. No sentient species could do this to their own. Atrocity after atrocity, depravity after depravity. Each story its own little piece of torture. The stories were true. They let our auditors gather the proof. Humans were truly terrifying in their capacity for cruelty and horror. The aggressive species as a whole decided to not take action against humans. If they would do this to their own, what were they capable of doing to others? But then the non-aggressive species came to the Greater Commons in droves, requesting asylum and protection against this great evil that we had inadvertently found. For surely they would be... destroyed by the humans. Again, the humans were asked before. Again, the humans were asked before the Greater Commons to ask them to refrain from destruction. But again, they sent us remembrances. Elliot, age 92, survivor, wildfires, California. Everything was on fire. It was like the whole world was on fire. My whole town burned that year. Everything. Nothing was left standing. 36 people lost their lives from those fires. All of them were jumpers or ladder companies. All of them were volunteers. They didn't do it for the money. They did it to help. Redacted. Nadia, age 73, survivor, brain tumor. I was 42 years old when I was diagnosed. By that time, I could barely walk anymore, let alone take care of my 3 kids while I was getting treatment. My partner did as much as he could, but he had to work. The closest hospital for my treatment was 2 hours away. I had to travel 2 to 4 times a week. My neighbors heard about my troubles. She organized 30 or 40 people to come every day to clean and cook. Then she organized people to drive me to my appointments every week. Redacted. Min June, age 94, survivor, melanoma. I had bad cancer when I was in my 20s. They started with all the standard treatments, chemo, radiation drugs, you name it, they tried it. The only thing those treatments did was slow it down. They said that the only thing left to try was a marrow transplant. My family and friends all went and got tested, and even though the test is agonizing, but none of them were a match. Seems I had some funky rare thing. My cousin put it out on social media that I needed a transplant and was looking for a donor. We'd figured we'd get maybe 100 people on the test date. Over 180,000 people showed. Over 180,000 people showed up and tested all over the country. That day, they found my match. They also found matches for 53 other people. Redacted. Amy, age in the Amy, age 31, posthumous, redacted. I make this statement of my own free will. I was not coerced in any way, and of sound mind and body. I hereby give permission to the doctor, redacted, to remove my redacted, to replicate and reproduce a serum and vaccine for the treatment of redacted. I understand that having redacted removed, it will kill me. To date, over 380 million have died of this disease, and over 300,000 are dying of it each day. I am one of under 100 people immune to the disease, and so far the only one to be a universal donor. Mom Emma. Mom Emma, Mommy Aggie. I love you both. Redacted. So many stories of kindness, compassion, and even sacrifice for others. Thousands of them, millions of them. How could this horror of a species, this great evil, have such compassion for others? Again we sent auditors to confirm, and again the stories were true. The Greater Commons chose a stance of non-interference with the humans. We would let them be, if they did the same. Then came the great famine of Entru. Ecological disaster destroyed more than 90% of their harvest. but the humans came with food and supplies. They did the same for the They did Hafenjuna. They did the same for the Hafenjuna and the Grutima and the Kermesterlians. They never asked for anything in return. The Greater Commons again didn't know how to react. Humans interfered, but they did it with altruism, something that could not be censured. When the Frinta were discovered by the Centaurans, they accidentally forgot to register them with the Greater Commons. They were already in the process of pacifying the planet when the humans found out about it. The Frintans now thrive within the Greater Commons, and the Sontaranse, but a footnote. The humans warned them, told them that the Frinta were now under human protection. They chose not to listen. The next time a new species was discovered and accidentally not registered with the Greater Commons, all it took was a polite letter written by a single human child for the species to be registered within the hour. Storytellers and their envoys are now a common thing amongst many races. They are some of the most revered beings within the galaxy. So now that I have your attention, let me tell you a story. End of story. That was a bit of a heavy one, but I think it was a good ending. You also, just a random thing, you don't want to kill all static. Absolute silence actually disturbs people. So you need background noise. It's why most microphones actually have a hiss, is so that it replicates the hiss of the environment. So it doesn't sound unnatural. Just a thing. So you never actually want to remove all sound. Nope, the hiss is built into every microphone. So now it's not so much of a problem, but we put a little bit of background music into our videos, not for any specific reason, but because the processing removes the hiss. So we need to put something back so it doesn't sound unnatural. So we put some music in. If we just left it as completely unnatural silence, you would notice it a lot more. So the problem with microphones is it records what you hear, but it doesn't record what an ear hears and what your brain processes. Up-doot-de-doot. But in my, the hiss, I think, is probably this. Shouldn't be coming through. So if I turn off this, and then do this, because this is processed audio now.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of HFY.
You can't hear a hiss anymore because we remove it as background noise. It's dead silence.
And
other than the hiss that's coming through my microphone, which we can just mute the microphone.
And greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of HFY.
There we go. So that noise disappears. We put some audio in so that it doesn't sound unnatural. The same reason why I have background noise. You know when they say that silence wants to be filled? That actually isn't a thing. Because silence, true silence, is unnatural to us, we try to make it not a thing. And in the age of headphones and stuff, it makes it even worse. Look, I mean, for actual audiobooks, you can't put music in. And they actually do want a certain level of hiss that's just low enough that you don't perceive that it's there, but you also don't perceive that it's missing. The human brain is weird. This is a funny thing happened to me when I first started narrating. Let me just move stuff around here quickly. So I've got my headphones on, and I've got an instant feed from the microphone. So before it even touches my computer, it works without even my computer being involved. I have feedback from the microphone, so I can hear what I sound like through the microphone. That's why people struggle with microphones. And I don't like the sound of my voice. It's because you're hearing it as an outsider for the first time. But that's whatever. You either get used to that or you don't. But my first microphone was so crap and cheap that it didn't have a dedicated loop for the headphones. So I used a software one. But the software one was a fraction of a second too slow. And what would happen if I started speaking, my ears would detect that I'm speaking slower than I expect to speak, because the software has to process it. So there's a fraction of a second difference. So my voice slows down to compensate, so that it's the same speed as I'm hearing, which slows down. So you speak normally, and then you just, without even thinking about it, you start speaking slower. And you just keep speaking slower and slower until you realize what's happening. The funniest thing ever. My wife thought I was insane. But thankfully, with all my other microphones, I've got real-time hardware in-ear monitors. Okay, on to the next story. Two, two, three. Gone in a flash. Gone in a flash. Yeah, I mean, you get used to it eventually. But it also changes the way you talk. So, because you're getting immediate feedback, you change your voice, and then that becomes norm. Yeah, no, it happens. I've had it happen to me. Your brain just glitches. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of HFY, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Gone in a Flash, written by Mr. Jake the Impaler. There is always a sense of excitement when a new species arrives in the galactic scene. For most of the older species, this excitement is mostly limited to possible trade routes and an increased workforce. But for those who still see the luster of new faces, it is time of celebration and hope. Every race tends to have some defining trait or quirk or talent. It is widely believed that in order to become a dominant species on your homeworld and achieve spaceflight, 3 things are required. Natural resources, obviously, intelligence, and an X factor. Now this X factor can be one of a billion things. It can be as exciting as the Geth and their ability to manipulate electromagnetic waves, or as boring as the gelatinous Broxtias and their obsession with perfect comfort. While most appreciate the fantastic upgrades to their chairs, it is boring and, quite frankly, unnerving. While most appreciate the fantastic upgrades to their chairs, it is boring and, quite frankly, unnerving. When humans first arrived, their search for their X-Factor began, but between the various experts in the galactic community and their own people, we just couldn't nail it down. For a while, it was whispered that their X-Factor was having no X-Factor. They were not average in most ways. It was just that in obvious aspects of life, and some not so obvious, there were always someone more extreme than them. Violent history surpassed by the Chitauri, who are currently on their 5th civil war of the galactic year. Insanity of their mad engineering surpassed by the Kaina, who have spent several years attempting to build a spaceship with no hull. After the 17th failure, many stopped sending their condolences. Hardiness? No, they were strong, but the Quiltargal were severe. But the Quiltargal could survive far, far worse. Maybe domestication and their obsession with adopting and riding animals. They came close. But unfortunately the Gath, this species caused much debate in the field of convergent evolution and linguistics, have the ability to understand and communicate with nearly any animal with enough time. They have several interesting customs that will not be discussed at this time. For many years, the debate stalled and spirals, many suspecting there was something so simple and boring we either already had it or wouldn't care about it. Until one year, the Kanya managed to get sponsored by an unknown party to develop a new weapon. We are unsure of its intended purpose or design, but the catastrophic failure caused a breakdown in their system. A black hole began to swirl in the space near their homeworld. Their star was being stripped bare. Planets devoured whole. Some survived. Some survived, but it was Some survived, but it was a blow to the psyche of the community as a whole.
Nearly every species, including some of the very old ones, expressed concerns over this event. The black hole spawned was growing irregularly and behaving oddly. The outermost planet of the system was in a wobbly orbit. The black hole grew and shrank, expelling blasts of energy at random intervals. It matched none of the agreed laws of the universe. Probes and research teams were dispatched to investigate and diagnose this thing that ignored the laws of physics. It wasn't long after that discovery was made. The device that spawned the black hole was still in existence. It wasn't long after that a discovery was made. The device that spawned the black hole was still in existence. A new wave of hope spread that was quickly killed. The device was stationary and seemingly invulnerable to the event horizon of the black hole passing over it as it expanded and shrunk, like a rock standing stubbornly against the waves. It was impossible to know how long it would be given visible. It was impossible to know how long it would be even visible, and once a window opened. This is called Adobe Edition. A lot of my earlier stuff was on Audacity. Like a rock standing stubbornly against the waves. It was impossible to know how long it would be even visible once a window opened. Weapons were tried, but even complicated lasers found themselves bent and distorted away from the device. Physical weapons, large enough to ignore the pull of the black hole long enough, were torn apart before they could impact properly. Smart projectiles could be fired by the electromagnetic waves that came off the black hole. It seemed hope was lost. The task was impossible. Until someone made a mistake of telling the wrong group of humans. The excitement that surged through their species and the drive into the work was a spectacle to behold. They borrowed, stole, recreated, and adapted technology from several other species. They even tried their hand at a ship with no hull. The community watched in disbelief. And we thought this had to be their X factor. Just like the black hole, they hated the idea of being told to obey the laws of the universe. When their ship was finally finished and a pilot selected, the reaction of the various species in the galaxy were mixed. They had managed to build a ship with no hull. The atmosphere and mechanics contained within layers of force fields. The temperature within was considered hospitable. Oh, thank you again, Vaka, for the blue super chat. Very much appreciated. Or should I say, Yarg, there'll be treasure in my coffers now. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's what I promised to do, so that's what I did. So force fields. The temperature within was considered inhospitable to most races, including the humans. The pilot rigged into the setup that made the youngsters who saw it scream. He was provided counseling and further viewing was banned on their world. When the day came, the ship launched. The humans had always had a fascination with the engines of other species. We never quite understood as they asked for details on how far they could be pushed. We had never taken into account the engines on their ships. With the luxury of light speed, space stations, and other wonders, we had mostly given up having powerful engines. Such a thing was just excess. More materials used and more heat to deal with. We thought the humans would be similar, watching their champion as we emerged from the in-between space of light. We Good morning, Link 7318, and definitely with energy. And more heat to deal with. We thought the humans would be somber, watching their champion as he emerged from the in-between space of light speed. Instead, they all watched in anticipation as their ship waited. They all watched in anticipation as their ship ran, waiting for its window. The starting line was 3 light seconds from the event horizon. We did not understand the ship's name yet, but we would soon. Sir Jaeger started up with a flare of plasma and began to tear through space. The humans began to cheer as he shot through space. Now, there are many reasons why lightspeed is a wonder, the closest we've gotten to magic. Rapid acceleration does many things to a body and to the hull of a ship. But the humans knew this, and as sure as we did. But the humans knew this as sure as we did. But they were insane enough to do it anyways. The force fields mitigated the hull damage. The body would still be destroyed, and we wept for the human in the chair. But the humans were insane enough and hardy enough to devise a system that kept him alive in the process. By a combination of the Bronze-Diax technology, anti-grav and other combinations combined with their own natural hardiness and some cybernetic augmentations, the man survived. There was some blood spray, and the man would likely not survive long after the mission was over, if he survived at all. But it seemed they did not care. The ship swiftly broke all known records for speeds achieved by any manned craft, as well as many by unmanned craft. It tore through space, any debris it struck being flung violently into deep space. The view provided by nearby ships and research stations cut in and out of its cameras were changed frantically. The galaxy watched in shock, awe, and horror. The galaxy was holding its breath except for one small corner. The humans were yelling and cheering, urging their champion on. On the edge of their seats, the galaxy watched this man spit in the face of the laws of the universe. As he neared it, the machine began to emerge from the event horizon. The coordinates locked in, and the ship shot towards it. The force fields began to distort as he drew closer and closer. But he held strong. The machinery began to snap, sparks flying in the air, arcs of electricity flying amongst the sparks of fire, field distorting around him. The human sent his final message back to us. "My name is Yuri Gagarin, and I am the fastest man alive." The ship slammed into the device, and an explosion ripped through the system as the black hole destabilized, releasing the energy of the star with a large wave. The rest of the galaxy joined humanity in their celebrations, astounded by what they had just witnessed. The Ganya released a prepared statement, swearing loyalty and fealty to the human race. It was not until weeks later, during a briefing into the entire plan the humans had enacted, amnesty was granted for most of the acts of thievery, when we finally were able to nail down the X-factor they possessed. The prospective pilot was being interviewed and was asked to explain the reason he would give his life for the cause. He simply looked into the camera and smiled. "I feel it. The same thing that drove all the other idiots like me in history. This is the reason I became a pilot. The hunger is in my soul, and I need this. I feel the need for speed." We had not understood the aspects of humanity properly, and it all began to click. From their beginning, the humans had domesticated horses and other animals so they could ride them, not for the sake of strategy or companionship, but to be faster. We thought their development of unstable combustion engines and nuclear fission was their insanity manifesting. We thought their achievement of spaceflight was a demonstration of their intellect. But finally the phrase translated properly: the space race. The humans did not carry out this mission to save the Kanye. That was just an added benefit, and a good way to get funding. The humans did not do this to prove wrong those who dared to tell them they couldn't. They just made it more fun. The humans did not do this to be innovative and create new elements in interspecies trade and collaboration. That was just an unintended side effect. The humans had fought the laws. The humans had fought the laws of the universe, proved the galaxy wrong, and developed this technology for one simple reason. They wanted to go faster. End of story. I have a need for speed. Dum 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 dum. Sounds about right. I think we need a stronger pencil to do that, fucker. ADD, that's humanity's pressing X factor. Literally, the one where the only reason that humanity has progressed so quickly is because of boredom. And that just resonates with me. One of the first ones I did. Not this story, there was another one. Good night, Zyborn. Thank you for popping past. Very much appreciated. Yeah. Alrighty. Huh, we're going for 2 hours already. How time flies when, the universe spins. Oh, stretch. Stretch. More stretch. Alright, we'll move on to the next story, which is not a retifos, it's a new story. 2748 dash. We would like to meet you. Yawn, yes. There we go. There's a stifled yawn. Ugh. Silent but violent. Alright, on to story number next. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called We Would Like to Meet You, written by 97C Webb. Which page? This page.
Sure. Can have a look at it. This is my recording schedule. My daily recording schedule. There you go. You can have a nice full look at it. So these are the series that goes onto the series channel. And these are the one-shots that go onto the main channel. And this is the TFOS series that will go onto the main channel. The red line is today. Purple means that it's been edited and recorded. Yellow means it's been recorded but not edited, as in like turned into a video with scrolling text. And then it basically is name, word count, and rough estimation at time of the video. Now I also missed the funny beginnings, but, you know, YouTube's the fun police, so we have to keep it simple now. Alrighty, let's zoom in a bit more. And back to work. This particular story is called We Would Like to Meet You, written by 97C Webb. There, sir. Message transmission. There, sir. Message transmitted. Hopefully we hear back soon. Indeed, Private. I imagine our first contact without even meeting them physically has gone so well. Within a short period of time, we may be able to see them, after several direct span of textual communications. How to imagine, sir, especially with our cutting-edge technology, who would have thought that another species would be able to decode what we have transmitted via FTL without knowing our language? That is why you are here, to learn the first rule of diplomacy and tactics. Never underestimate the opposition. Sounds easy, but overdoing it leads to paranoia. Overdoing. But overdoing it. Overdoing it leads to paranoia. And underdoing it. Wait, where is it? And underdoing it leaves you dead. Quite so, sir. Anyways, I'll keep watch over this. Continue on. Overseer Skotit calmly walked out of the room, leaving Bront to his monitor. Leaving Brunt to monitor the state of the antenna. Leaving Brunt to monitor the state-of-the-art antenna to read the FTL comms background noise and pick out the signal coming from somewhere called Earth. Brunt, getting back to work, puts on the radio. Brunt, getting back to work, puts on the audio production device and starts to listen closely to the filtered noise of the telltale signs of communication. And starts to listen closely to the filtered noise for the telltale. Random cough. Whoa. And starts to listen closely to the filtered noise for the telltale signs of communication. The sound of erratic, yet known long and short tones interspersed with moments of silence. Listening closely, he hears the underlying hiss of the system and tries to stay awake.
Hours later, he snaps awake as part of his mind picks up the chirps that have been ingrained into his mind since he was young. Looking to the stars and ships above, quickly writing down what he is hearing, and then calls the overseer again. We would like to meet you as well. Where would you like to meet? Finally, a straightforward answer, and nice and short as well. Brunt announces out loud, to no one in particular, reflecting back on the massive dump of text that he received a couple weeks ago that resulted in him needing to have an operation done on his wrist after writing it out. What is it, Private? Sir, Brunt jumps up, knowledge. What is a private? Sir, Brunt jumps up upon knowledge of his overseer being in the room. They reply back, nice and short, and wanting us to choose a meeting place. Excellent. The best meeting place would be The best meeting place will be Breck Psycho. The best meeting place will be Breck Psycho 5. The best meeting place will be Breck Seeker's 4th planet. Excellent. The best meeting place will be Breck Seeker 5's 4th planet. Nice and close and easy directions. It's in between 2 pulsars and has very set frequencies. Understandable, sir. Such a simple instruction cannot lead to any issues. Indeed. Here, I'll write it down, and then you can hammer it out to them. Great. Meet us at Brexica 5, between the 2 pulsars of frequency Between the 2 pulsars of frequency 5 zoltans and 7.3254 zoltans. Brunt quickly punches out the text and ensures the antenna does exactly. Brunt quick. Yes and no. Problem is it slows everything down, like considerably. To now move audio to another place. I'm doing punch and cut, punch and roll editing, so it's very difficult to keep uptakes, and then to actually do it means I need to keep it in the original audio, process it, then cut out the thing to move it to a separate MP3 file. So it's a thing. Anyways, we've got the stream to capture all of my glorious mistakes, so there's that as well. B254 Zoltan. Brunt quickly punches out the text and ensures the antenna does its actually sends at. Brunt quickly punches out the text and ensures the antenna does its Brunt quickly punches out the text and ensures the antenna does actually sends it out, and goes back into his listening stupor, waiting for the next reply. Hours pass. Even more hours. Eventually, more beeping arrives, and Brunt writes it out as received. How long is the Zoltan? How long is the Zoltan? Brunt, slightly flabbergasted, calls back up the overseer, and Scotted arrives shortly after. Brunt, slightly flabbergasted, calls up, and overseer Scotted arrives shortly after. What do they mean they saw? What do you mean when they say how long a Zoltan is? It's exactly 5 frutums. It is our oldest unit. We are communicating through literal subspace, and they cannot even understand our clock. What do you mean? What do you mean when they say? What do they mean when they say how long a Zoltan is? It is exactly 5 frutums. It is our oldest unit. We are communicating through literal subspace, and they cannot even understand our clock. Brunt, calm yourself. It could be a minor misunderstanding. They have mistranslated. They may have mistranslated our units. Try transmitting the frutum equivalent instead. Very well, sir. A Zoltan is exactly 5 frutums, making the pulsar to be 25 frutums and 36.627 frutums. More time passes. How long is a frutum given that 5 of them is equal to a Zoltan? See? They don't know. Surely, for they have replied back with the exact same units, and even got the ratio correct. I'll go find a unitary dictionary and see if that'll help. The overseer heads out, and returns shortly to see Brunt staring despairingly at the note. I've returned with the dictionary. Here, just send the actual definition. The writers of this did much better job than what I could try and paraphrase it as. Brunt takes the dictionary and starts relaying it through the antenna. Brunt takes the dictionary and starts relaying it through the antennae. Zoltan, the smallest non-fractional unit of time measurement, set to be the exact rotational period of Gasset's pulsar. After punching this out, Brunt looks like... After punching this out, Brunt looks intently at the definition again, feeling that something is off. Going back into his listening stupor, he constantly turns over in his mind that something seems quite wrong. Where is Gasset's pulsar? Oh no, circular reference, Overseer, Overseer! What is it this time? Last time you yelled for me, it turned into an interstellar incident. Those headlines are still some of the most sought-after papers ever. We have a problem. There is a circular reference in our reassuring. There is a circular reference to our reasoning. The time is based... The time is based off the revolution of Gasset's pulsar. But the only way to tell them what Gasset's pulsar is to tell them the frequency, which again is based off the revolution. Which again is based off the revolution of Gasset's pulsar. That is not... Well, You're right, it is circular. That's not good. What about... No, that's the same thing. Well, ask them. Okay. But the likeliness of them doing something is quite unlikely. But at least we can try. The only way to identify Gasset's pairs. The only way to identify Gasset's pulsar is by its frequency. We just realized that our entire system is circular. If you can come up with a meeting place that we can meet at, please let us know. Before Brunt can even get back into his stupor, a new message arrives. How good is your science? What do you mean, how good is our science? We are communicating to them after weather. We are communicating with them over FTL comms, which only has a purpose if you are spacefaring. If they really wanted to, they could give us several Dirkskpa and Dirktikspah. If they really wanted to, they could give us several Dirkspta, and we will create a time unit to share. Patience, Private. Again, that is why you are here. Maybe they have an idea. Really good. FTL communications, interstellar FTL travel, multiple other species contacted and alliances. That should clear it up. A few more frutums passed, and suddenly a great wall of text is sent. We have a unit. We have a unit that is designed to be deduced from nothing. It is called the second. To find its length, get a small amount of... To find its length, get a small amount of the 55th element, cesium, purified to obtain solely one of whose core's weight is 133 units, then cooled it to absolute zero temperature. The frequency at which it changes between the two lowest energy levels, hyperfine ground states, is set to be 9... okay. Is set to be... is said to be 9,192,631,770 a second. Counting that number of cycles is, by definition, the length of a second. What? What is it? They answered already. Really? Yes. And their definition, we need some physicists. But we know exactly how long this time unit is. In fact, it is likely we have everything we need in the glass of water. Let me see it. The overseer pushes Brunt out the way and quickly scans the document. After reading, he leans back and shakes his head incredulously. What is it? What is the matter, Overseer? Nothing. Just that I think we both learned not to underestimate the other side again. They still have not stated where to meet. True, but they probably want to hear that we received this action. True, but they probably want to hear that we received this already. While leaning over to write out their reply message, Runt immediately snatches the pen back from the Overseer, so goated, as the antenna starts beeping again. Also, we are to be sending another message shortly for a test. As soon as you get it, reply back. Do not wait for the entire message. Just reply with an A. That's a little rude. Not to wait for a reply. Not to wait for a reply. Yes, it is. But there may be a method to their madness. Wait for a reply and then send the A. Wait for a reply. Wait for a reply back and send the A, and ask what it was about. Yes, sir. Several frutums later. A. What was the purpose of that? We were able to communicate no issue before. Why are you checking individual letters? No reply is heard from many frutums. Eventually a reply is heard. Okay, so we now know which direction you're in. Okay, so we now know which direction you're in and how far away you are within a small area of uncertainty. From this, we can say that the best meeting spot would be between the pulsars that have frequencies of 7.256 cycles per second, hertz, 0.4587 hertz, and 0.0145 hertz. The system to meet in inside this triangle would be the one that is twice as close to 7.256 hertz as compared to the others. That was fast and quite accurate. Indeed, they must have had to communicate with another. They must have had to communicate with another species before. The accuracy on these measurements is astounding. To think, using something so common, it can be found in water, to determine the definition of time, it is simple and genius simultaneously. And not only were they able to communicate the pulsar locations, but the location of the system inside the area. Quite so. I'll leave you to fleshing out the details now, as I see to that you're getting... I'll leave you to fleshing out the details now, as I see that you are getting the idea of not underestimating others. Runt leans back in his seat, satisfied that he is finally doing a good job, and marveling at the accuracy of these others' capabilities of telling time. Going back into his stupor, he is calm and relaxed. Beep, 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 beep. As it seems that you do not have time based on inherent properties, please see the following describing distance unit meter. Please see the following describing distance unit meter. It is defined by the speed of light in a vacuum, where light will travel 299792458 meters in 1 second. A standard human who we are talking to is roughly 2 meters tall. Astounding. They were able to predict what info we would need to next and provide it to us. They were able to predict what info we would need next and provide it to us, and they have these units ready to use. Thank you for this unit. Also, how many other species have you met by communicating only? Thank you for this unit. Also, how many other species have you met by communications only? You have units solely defined based on constants across space, and they are easy to work with. It'll take time for our scientists to build these machines and to make these measurements, though, but they're going to be more accurate than what we have already. You may have redefined time here. Brunt, taking a short break after writing out this message. Massages his wrist from the amount of letters punched out and to transmit that. Just as he's relaxing, more beeping. We have not met no other species via communications only, and only one other species. How is that possible? Why would you base your unit and set... Why would your base unit be set upon these constants otherwise? Long ago, some people decided to redefine measurements on a more accurate system. It was decided to make these based on natural phenomena rather than royal decree or physical prototypes. This was made to correlate with the thought that the world can be explored by anyone and anyone. That the world can be explored by anyone and everyone can add to it. They started off with the meter, and slowly all units of measurement were added, so that no one owns the meter. No one can change the meter on a whim, and its length is fixed, as its measurement to a more accurate level boosts how precise it can be measured with. The meter can be correlated units. And the meter and the correlated units are set, and given the definition and enough time, anyone can determine anything to this common system, no matter what. No worries about war destroying them, nor rust or time decay. No worries about war destroying them, nor rust and time decay, nor others who think they are better than themselves and want to change it. They are permanent and probably the most scientifically human thing about us. To learn, to understand, to determine the most pure absolute about anything possible, and to continue to improve on it. End of story. So, there was a missed punchline there. There was a very big missed punchline there. The answer is quite simple. We've spent millennia trying to explain it to the Americans, but 3 elephants still doesn't equal 16 meters. There you go. Or freedom units will always make us explain better. Love story.
2749. Yes. Humans have made. Maeve. Spelling mistake. Woohoo. I shall be back in a moment. Just want to go grab a monster. I'll leave you with some music and an empty chair. The excitement never ends during the stream. All right. Back. With a clicky-crack chair. Oh, yes, boomer juice. All right. Good night, Lazy Comet. Hope you sleep well. All right. On to the story. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Humans Have Made Demons Redundant, written by Greetings, ladies. Written by Random 3X. So, this is where the demon lives, Hattie asked her guide as he led the way through the mountains. She had spent quite a lot of money just for a chance to see an actual creature of myth, only to be disappointed time and time again. Too often, they had been statues of monsters or just some poor person with a deformity from injury or disease. Never anything from countless texts that filled the archives. She wanted to encounter a nightmare, the beings that took the form of people most feared, or maybe a sixth skin changer, or maybe a skin changer. Her desire for the experience was such that even with her family's long-built fortune, she'd still made a considerable dent in it. "Worry not, pretty lady, we'll soon be at the valley," the dwarf. Okay, dwarf. "Worry not." And as we all know, dwarves have to speak like dwarves. "Worry not, pretty lady, we'll soon see." "Worry not, pretty lady, we'll soon be at the valley," the dwarven guide Hans assured her. The man was highly recommended as one of the few that knew safe passages through the Dragon Nest mountain range. Despite its name, dragons hadn't been seen since the Dusk Republic had been founded. Many doubted the creatures even existed, though Hanny was a believer. "Good. I paid a lot to see the Valley of Nightmares and expect to get my money's worth. Worry not, pretty lady, though it is called the Valley of the Sleeping Horse." A clever renaming done by 13th. A clever renaming done by the 13th. You really should read up on the subject. The Academy has some fascinating texts about it. "I shall do that when I can afford the tuition, miss. But we are finally here," Hans replied, gesturing to the narrow passageway in the rock wall. Peering through, she could see a glimmer of light shining. "Village is filled with nice people. Village is filled with nice people living in peace. There is an old man, Gunther, who shall greet you. He knows all the residents and shall guide you from the entrance." And he nodded. Throughout the trek across the range, he had regaled her with tales of the most mundane people. The little isolated village where records said the most terrifying mystical creatures took refuge. Wiggling her way into the narrow passage, she pushed forward until the light at the end grew brighter and brighter. The passage opened onto a valley below, which was verdant with life. The chill of the range seemed to devoid in the chill of the range seemed devoid in its almost idyllic paradise. It would be a very nice place to take refuge from the world, but the world has growing and expanding, and they couldn't stay isolated forever. Our guest has arrived." An old and withered voice came from behind her. Turning around, Handy saw an old man in a simple clothes with a cane leaning against the wall next to the entrance. She be the visitor that I told you about. The one with a taste for the old," Hans explained, freeing himself from the passage. "A taste for the old man repeated. His gaze swept over Hattie as a smirk spread across his face. "I can assist with that, though it depends on the old you wish to see. We have the old smithy with Tom. He is a big fellow working the angle. Or perhaps Miss Dorothy, the one in the tower." "I want to see the truly ancient," Hattie declared, her eyes alight with curiosity. "The tower, then, with Miss Old Dorothy. She is the caretaker of that thing," he replied, pointing his cane to the distance where Hattie could make out a stone.
pointing his cane to the distance, where Hallie could make out a stone tower. "It used to belong to the 13th, you know." The old man's words caught Hallie off guard. If they were true, the tower would be an archaeological treasure trove. Even a few knickknacks from it would be prized possessions of any museum. "To the tower, then," Hallie said excitedly, gesturing to the worn path before them, nodding to hands. "To the tower, then," Hallie said, gesturing. "To the tower, then," Hallie said excitedly, gesturing to the worn path before them, nodding to hands. The old man began to lead the way. "I'm Hallie, by the way. Sorry for forgetting my manners," Hallie said, as she walked beside the old man. "I am Gunther," the old man replied with a smirk as he gestured to the village that was coming into clear view. Walking into the village was like stepping back in time to Hallie. All the buildings looked centuries old, though, as if they had been only built recently. Above all, though, the people confused her. They all seemed to be dressed in simple garb. Hallie presumed that the latest brands would not likely reach this place like this. However, glancing at the dwarf trailing behind them in South Bridgerton football top, somewhat quashed the idea that this place was entirely cut off. "So, are there any nightmares here?" Hallie asked eagerly. "Ah!" Gunther stopped in his tracks and looked at the girl. "I see you're one of those. Very well. Halastrixerax. Okay, we'll go with that. Mr. Halastrixerax shall be the one you meet then, not Miss Dorothy." "Mr. what?" "Just call him Mr. Hallis. He will explain it to you," Gunther explained as he turned her off the path to the tower towards a small cottage. With a knock at the door, an old man called out, "Our guest is one of those. Explain as best you can, lad." Turning to Hallie, Gunther placed a hand on her shoulder and looked her in the eyes. "This is your last chance to meet Mrs. Dorothy. She can share the history. If you want the mystical well, be prepared to wet yourself." Hallie nodded, determined to proceed as she gently opened the door, expecting to see the most horrifying demon ever. "Mr. Hallis," Hallie called out, gently, as she looked around the dim cottage, finding a hulking figure the size of a titan by the fireplace. The creature her eyes fell upon was the most horrifying thing that she could ever imagine. She felt a primal fear, but her curiosity quickly overcame it, as she was more drawn to discovering who, or even what, he was. "So, you're a nightmare?" Hallie asked tentatively. "Me? No. I'm a plain old demon from the 7th Circle. Not a nightmare, so you wish," came his reply. "I was told that I would meet a nightmare, though. Not to say that I'm not pleased to meet a demon of any kind," Haley hastily replied, trying to cover her poor manners. "Well, you have. This is the village where they reside. Your records may fail to mention that they do not take on the form of most fear. Your records may fail to mention that they do not take on the form of the most fear. Your records may fail to mention that they do not take on the form you most fear." "Then the villagers. Wait, what do you mean they don't take on the form we most fear?" "They take on the form you expect. The Fourth just used that trick to spread word of their fearful appearance, and boom, they got stuck looking like the scariest thing ever," the demon explained, pouring from a teapot into a cup. "So that's why the dwarf told me that all the story. So that's why the dwarf told me all those stories," Hallie muttered. Hallie muttered, realizing Hans had already set her up to have an image of what the locals looked like. "What of you, then? Where are the other demons?" The demon looked wistful, if that could be. The demon looked wistful, if that could ever be ascribed to an inhuman features that Hallie assumed made a face. "There are so few of us left, you know," the demon began conversation as he sipped from a cup of tea. "We used to be legion. All the beasties and monsters that went bump in the night. The kind of things you so wished to see, but now we are barely hanging on. Do you even know why that is?" Hattie shook her head while shrugging. "I honestly don't. Did hunters kill you all off?" "Well, no doubt a few of our number fell to hunters. It would not explain such a drastic drop. You see, human—" The demon paused, his face crunched up, as if the word was as if the word were excrement on his tongue. "You see, we feed and thrive off your race's fear of us. Back when you lived in little towns and villages, we would be able to gorge ourselves just by saying a little hello to the few residents. But now we barely get scraps, even from horror films, where your race is off where our races are the stars." "Surely we're still afraid of you?" Hattie asked, knowing very much firsthand how scary this demon was. "You'd think so. But you things advanced. You made the world so much smaller and made things far more terrifying than anything a demon could conjure. You made weapons that would turn cities into dust at the press of a button. You had made devices to whisper sweet fears into your ears at every moment of your day and called it news. I am a demon, but your race has long since surpassed my race's ability to create fear. We're lucky if we get even a jump scare out of you." Well, I am suitably scared of you, sir," Hattie offered. "Barely a snack to be had with my tea. I envy the nightmares, for they can eat as mortals do. But the kinds of creatures you so desire to meet, well, they are dying by inadequacy to your race's own efforts. Magic has long since faded from this world, and all the mystical creatures you wish to meet, well, they may be amongst you, but they are not in a position to relive their glory." "Is there any way to bring it back?" Hattie asked. "Not that I know of. The 13th and his merry band of lunatics could probably do something. But a little thing. Let me put it this way." The hulking massive demon put his teacup down with gentle care as he turned to face Hattie fully. "If that band of lunatics did do something like that, imagine the terror of the worst war imaginable, and then multiply it by me. Okay, gotcha. Not good. Well," Hattie fidgeted and shuffled in a spot under the demon's figure in front of her. The demon let out a long sigh. "Yes, you can have a selfie. Just don't blame me when you get called a fake and accused of using AI artwork." End of story.
Isn't that very similar to the what's the movie? She, I think. With Scarlett Johansson and what's his name? And he falls in love with the computer. Never watched it, but I do remember seeing YouTube videos about it. One of the most graphic, on the lists of best sci-fi ever. It's like, and look, I want Starship Troopers. I don't want romantic bullshit. I want Judge Dredd rather than
Alright, the next one is going to be a 2-story video. Oops, touching the microphone. Breaking rule number 1. Fair enough. Do 2750 in memoriam. All right, on to story number next. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration on the web. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called In Memoriam, written by Icarus Sunburn. There is an old firearm on the bridge of my ship. It's ancient and obsolete. A heavy, long-barreled thing of flat black aluminium alloys and scratched green synthetic plates and handles. Its ammunition has not been manufactured in mass for almost 150 star cycles. Had to be handmade, and was never made by any member of the Combine. It used to be grainy explosive propellant to launch various types of slugs of metal or ceramic at extreme speeds. The noise it made when it unleashed its three-round burst deafened the crew for long minutes afterwards, and left our ears dulled for hours. Its recoil is the stuff of legend, and our gunnery officer at the time compared it to a very small form of automatic artillery after bruising himself and his pride badly when he attempted to fire it. The handles were never made to fit my hands, the stock not set for my shoulders. Its weight is unwieldy for me, even in low gravity. Yet I have seen that weapon mow down a pirate boarding crew while its owner bared her teeth in a strange combination of savagery and amusement, whooping it from target to target with all the ease of a child swinging a hollow reed. Whooping it from target to target with all the ease of a child swinging a hollow reed. I've seen the sparkling cloud of unburned propellant oxidizing in the ship's atmosphere in a wake of its terrible stuttering roar. I've seen it the holes left in the soldiers and pirates, the thugs. I've seen the holes it has left in soldiers and pirates and thugs and would-be assassins. Small holes the size of a finger where it entered them, and holes as big as a Duric fist as it left, carrying pulverized muscle and bone and organs with it. I have heard the cries of terror from many different throats in many different languages when this terrible antique bore down upon them, with its owner's predatory stare behind it. Cries cut short with three angry barks that fired. Cries cut short with three angry barks that I felt in my bones. There was no mercy with this weapon, no beam to cut away the last second, leaving only a scorched burn. No, stunning kinetic wave dialed to merely knock the victim against the bulkhead and pacify. No settings to turn down, no mercy to be found within this aluminium, steel, and plastic form. No settings to turn down, no mercy to be found within its aluminium, steel, and plastic form. No way to make it anything less than the terrible tool of destruction that it was designed to be. Its form was shaped into a silent threat, its barrel a yawning void that mirrored the darkness of death itself. It is an old, illegal weapon. Should any Combine official see it, they would almost immediately confiscate it and search my ship for the owner. They would never find them, however. They're long dead. Merely a name on a ship's register and on a small platinum plaque in the engineer's compartment next to a small hammock of once brightly colored cloth. I keep the weapon locked away, safe in a compartment I built behind the bulkhead, with bricks of its ammunition stacked safely in a vacuum, each one waiting patiently to be directed at a life that its wielder no longer deems necessary. I've thought many times about simply disposing of the weapon, jettison it into space and move on. Why take the risk? I cannot, however. I merely sigh and heft its weight in my arms again, my eyes tracing each scratch and scar on its surface, each of those marks bringing back memories of not only conflict, but of a certain creature. A person, a friend. Ricey do not often form attachments that span beyond death, but this rare member of my crew will be in my prayer song for the rest of my life. My children have heard her deeds, have watched my baubles hang in grief. My children have heard her deeds, have watched my baubles hang in grief when I remember that she will no longer be sitting on the ramp of my ship, that horrible weapon sitting in her lap, with something insulting to say about whatever planet or berth we'd found ourselves in. My children. I wished that she could have met them, could have shown them that the stories we hear on the news, that the whispers and rumors and outright lies are not always to be believed. It sounds strange, with how I've described her in here, that I would want her to say that I would want her on the same planet as my family. But I have only spoken about her in the context of the weapon. There was far more to the owner of that death machine than cruelty and rampant gleeful mayhem. There were jokes and small moments of joy that I will treasure. There was concern in those green eyes, with their impossibly dark and round pupils when I was wounded. There was a sense of duty and camaraderie in her actions when she fought a little, and camaraderie in her actions when she fought for and with the crew. There were memories of intense fascination she found with being a zero-G, cavorting and somersaulting through the air in ways her body was never meant to, especially with her augments to prevent her body from literally withering after prolonged exposure to it. No. There was far more than death and destruction, and that savage grin that so many unfortunates had burned into their mind moments before their brutal death. Enough memories of a lifetime spent ferrying the lifeblood of the Combine between the worlds and stations and outposts. Not my lifetime, but her brief flash of existence, like the twinkle of a distant star. The human I counted amongst my crew and my friends. Jessie. I owed my life to the human many times over. I owe her still, in the deepest parts of my will. She chose to disregard that debt, spat at the concept, mocked and ridiculed me for it. Humans don't think that way, you see. They understand repayment, but to hold that debt as sacred as the Ricey do, she would have none of it. You are a goddamn captain, she'd say. You can't fucking command if you're always worried about serving me in crap. I don't need you taking some arsehole shot. I don't need you taking some arsehole shot that was meant for me out of a fucking duty, because I hate your fucking XO. Because I hate your fucking XO and the rest of this mustachioed. Greetings. Because I hate your fucking XO and the rest of this mustachioed facts on the ship won't listen to me. Shut the fuck up, command the fucking ship, and knock it the fuck off, sir. Foul-mouthed, often ill-tempered, aggressive to a fault, easily angered. She was all of these, but she could be kind, friendly, and when she was at ease, swinging in her hammock with one leg hanging out, strange human music wailing around the engineering berth, she exuded an almost peaceful air about her. Those were rare moments. Ricey valued their peaceful moments, the silence in which to clear our minds. The humans I've met before, I knew Jessie, during her time on board and after her death, all seemed to value them as well. But they all thrive in danger. They adapt. They overcome. It's etched into them, like the names of my children into the touchstone of my home's doorway. It serves them well. It served her well. Safe to say, the end of the story is already known. Jessie has been dead for 50 years. This very hour. I have a notification pop up every year on my computers to mark the occasion of her death. Irony. A very human concept claimed her in the end. Not in the form of a bullet or a blade or a tooth or a claw or venom. No creature's wrath ended her time in this universe, which she would have preferred. Her fading body was the culprit. Time, the greatest killer in this universe, was the only thing that could stop Jessie's grand march through the stars, and humans only live a century at most. No matter how many artificial organs they stuff into themselves, or how much they reinforce their thick matter of their brains against decay, entropy claims all of us in the end. At 68 years of age, merely 43 of those spent crewing for me, time itself was forced to take her on. I have no doubt that somewhere in some plane of the universe in which time is a physical being, it is an incredible set of injuries from the night in which she chose to disrupt. From the night. It is an incredible being. It has an incredible set of injuries from the night in which it chose to disrupt Jessie's sleep for something as mundane as death. End of story. Good morning, Caveman 110. Hope you're doing well. Well, I mean, also, there's been quite a few science fiction related stories similar to Demolition Man. A man at a time sort of story.
Ooh, 750. Ooh, stretch. More stretch. It's never explained. It's supposed to be like a joke that never gets explained. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying that series, Caveman. Story number 2. Story number 2. The worst way to feck up when dealing with humans. Written by Victor Stain. One fledgling ship. That was all it took to bring down my empire. Emperor Rolf Grillglurg, the 10, 20, 30, 39. Emperor Rolf the 39th was sitting in a battered, burned and barely functioning life pod as he orbited what was once his home. The planet below him was once a beautiful piece of art, with the purple forests, sparkling water and wondrous cities, with architecture that could only be dreamed of by other races. All of that was gone. The water was a disgusting mix of brown and green from the unholy amounts of his people's blood and countless tons of pollution. The forests were burned, leaving nothing but a scarred and scorched earth. What little was left would soon be cinders, and his cities. Oh, how he's... And his cities. Oh, how he mourned for them. The once awe-inspiring spires and centres of commerce, as well as dwellings, nothing more than mounds of rubble, with whatever scrap was found being repurposed into ships in a vain effort to save the elites, or remained of them, at least. In just over a year, his glorious empire was shattered and brought to its knees by some upstart race of weak, bipedal, fleshy mammalian apes. The very fact that such a race was alive and survived long enough to be brought onto the galactic stage sickened and offended the Emperor of many other Volran. Many other Volran. Just when our dear Emperor thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. His communication hub suddenly crackled to life with an audio message. Emperor Rolf Grillglurg of the Evanora Empire. This is Admiral Julia Hernandez of the Terran Collective. You are to be put on trial, along with other members of your military and supposed elites. We are about to intercept your orbit, and you will be held within the TCSM Spite as a prisoner. Any attempt of violence and harassment. Any attempt at violence or harassment can, and most probably will, be met with your quick and very bloody execution. All attempts to flee are futile. If you are found to already be dead, we may attempt to revive you for the previously mentioned trial. Tears of anger and anguish spilled from the Emperor's eyes, and as a gargantuan ship that was the Spite loomed over the horizon, he let out a scream which he hoped would cause any within the system to go deaf. Of course, the void remained cold, uncaring, and silent, leaving his screams to echo and reverberate in only his skull. In the hangar bay of the Spite, 40 Marines surrounded the battered life pod that rested on the floor, many stealing glances to the Admiral who, unlike the rest of them in armor, wore only her dress uniform. With a small hand gesture from her, one Marine moved forward and activated the pod's door. As soon as the hatch was open enough, the Emperor burst forth in a blind rage.
his only goal to strangle the life out of the Admiral with his own graspers. The Marines instantly aimed their weapons towards him, but did not fire. The Emperor did not notice nor care. His entire being was focused on charging the savage ape that barely came up to his first frills. Just as he leapt to tackle her, his prey had vanished. Before he even touched the ground, he felt two of his back limbs get torn off. He howled in pain, and as he turned to face the beast, a boot seemed to materialize beside his face, before slamming into it and shattering one of his mandibles. He crumpled to the floor, shrieking in rage and pain. A shriek that, when later asked about in a certain Marine, stated that it could sound like a 12-year-old who might... that it could sound...
Hello? Doc just walked in.
That when later... A shriek that when later asked about a certain Marine stated that it sounded like a 12-year-old who just lost a match in either Halo or COD.
You savage, primitive, inbred apes! How dare you do this to me? How many worlds have you burned? How many beings killed? You should have never left the hellhole that is your planet! Why couldn't you bomb yourselves into oblivion? The Alliance should have purged you from existence. Ah!
His ranting was cut short by the crushing of another of his limbs. The tiny female bent down close, so close their faces nearly touched, and when he looked into her eyes, he felt true fear. The room was silent, and though her words were barely a whisper, they could be heard all... The room was silent, and though her words were barely a whisper, they could be heard by all in attendance. You want to know my opinion? Not enough. Then compare you... You want to know my opinion? Not enough. Then compared to you, barely anything. I hope that the pencil pushers would stay on their asses and allow us to march right on, burning every one of your worlds, cracking them open so they could be used for something constructive. We should have taken prisoners. We shouldn't have taken prisoners, and we most certainly should never stop killing you bugs until you're all completely exterminated. Now let me ask you, how many has your empire killed? How many systems have you burned? How many have you enslaved? How many children have you murdered? The Emperor couldn't react. He was reduced to a cowering mass of chitin. His eyes locked with the humans as waves of emotions radiated from them. She rose from her bent position and barked orders for the Emperor to be restrained and thrown into the brig with the others. Hours later, in her private quarters, Admiral Julia Hernandez sat at her desk with an empty bottle of liquor. Next to it was a strange medal, depicting one of the Furies, with a banner below it reading Trisphone. Reading.
Good afternoon, Candaria. Hope you're doing well.
But reading. Tisiphone. She held a small photograph of her little brother. He was hugging in front of the Voltaire before he boarded. Tears ran down her face. They'll never hurt anyone again. I got the bad guys, just like I said I would. You don't have to be afraid of any more, Alex. At a terminal at Terran High Command received a message to High Command from the From TCSN Spite, Admiral Hernandez, Fury. Tesiphone class. Operation Final Destination successful. Objectives contained. Subject, well done. The Volra Empire ceased to exist 3 days after Final Destination, all territory falling under Terran collective authority, though a good portion would be gifted to the Galactic Alliance. Once, each and every slave was freed as well as instantly granted collective citizenship and rights. Then, after heavy terraforming and rebuilding, were given back their cradle worlds when possible. A week after the Empire was annihilated, Rolf Gridlick the 39th, many of the Volrin elites and high-ranking military officials were put on trial. All were found guilty. Their crimes cited included xenocide, enslavement of other sapiens, abuse of cubs, hatchlings, children of sapiens, illegal slave trade, kidnapping, inhumane experimentation, and so on. But there was one charge limited to the Emperor and a Volrin general: the mass murder of 900 civilians, 600 of which were human children, and the destruction of a French ship Voltaire, which was primarily used for education purposes. 5 days later, Rolf and the general came up with the idea to destroy the Voltaire, were beheaded. 5 days later, Rolf and the general who came up with the idea to destroy the Voltaire were beheaded. The event was not broadcast, but was recorded. Only images of the late Rolf's head were allowed to be published. This was the first time in nearly 900 years that France authorized the use of capital punishment and use of the guillotine. All others were also executed, but done in more standardized ways, like injections. Rumor is that while not broadcasted, the video of the executions was sent to members of the Alliance and was shown to any Volran that attempted to reinstate their empire. When asked how these high-ranking captives were treated when the collective custody humans and other races within the collective will answer. When asked how these high-ranking captives were treated when in collective custody, humans and any other race within the collective will always answer. Humans and any other race within the collective will answer with some form of confidential or classified. End of story. Good afternoon, Nicobat. Hope you're doing well. Yes, so for a very long time, I still don't read. Personally. Not anymore. It really becomes too much like work. For a very long time, I didn't even watch movies or series and stuff because I was just so burnt out on fiction. It's probably why most of the games I play have no story whatsoever. Why are you grunting at me? You're a dog, not a pig. Well, you're both, but you know what I mean. Alrighty, we're at 3 hours and 10 minutes. Been a long stream. Yes. I don't think there was anything else we've completely caught up. We're a week ahead, so tomorrow I'll be sick. It left. I call it Puppy, but it's my 8-year-old dog. It'll always be my puppy, I suppose. But tomorrow is a glorious day. A day like none other. Tomorrow we start reading Billy Bob Space Trucker, the most HFY story in HFY existence. It is glorious in its stupidity and enjoyment. Anyway, so yeah, tomorrow will be Billy Bob. And then we'll probably get a good chunk of Billy Bob, probably like 10 chapters. That'd be awesome.
introduced Billy Bob to a whole new range of people, and to a new microphone. The last time I did this was on a really crap microphone. This is why we're doing the updating thing. Anyways, thank you all for spending your time with me in this day and age. Attention and time are two resources that are fought over, so I do appreciate you spending both with me. I hope you all have a fantastic day, night, work shift, travel, or whatever you may haps be.